Right, sorry for keeping you waiting. Here we are, let's go. So dollar coming off, potential for that to give the markets a reprieve, but we're coming into support. Why am I looking at the dollar? Because what the dollar does impacts US and of course Europe, particularly London. A strong dollar is actually good for FTSE. A strong dollar is not necessarily good for the US. So if this comes off, this gives commodities a chance, and the US markets a chance to pop back up. So at the moment, this looks as if we could continue to come lower. I'll take this line off. I'll take this band off. So if we continue to see this decline, lower highs, if we ultimately close underneath and stay underneath that triangle, then we could see some more upside in the US markets. If this picks up, then we could see increased volatility and lower markets. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. So we got a bounce last week, but all we've done is go into 2021 lows. By all means, ask any questions as I go along. So unless we can get above this 12,200, this market could wind back down to that breakout area. This week, data-wise, let me just remind myself, we've got G7. G7 started, or day 2 of G7 today, the meeting again tomorrow, and then OPEC Wednesday. I got US GDP on Wednesday, looking for a lower number in US GDP. So at the moment, this is set to retreat back into last week's push. At the moment, wherever we find ourselves around that 12,200 on NASDAQ, that could determine where the market could or couldn't go. Let's look at the FTSE. A nice dip into this key 7,000 support. That's a very bullish push up, but all we've done is boomerang back into the drop zone. So again, unless that can keep closing higher, we could start to fall over again and come and find March lows. Bear with me one brief moment. Okay, so quickly move across the DAX. DAX is really struggling. That is really under the cosh. So that's not encouraging at all. This market cannot close back above 2021 lows. In the meantime, oil we've had a decent pullback into this 102. I think the low was close to 100. Yeah, $101. Currently sitting here just under 110. So now all the new contracts are in place. This looks higher, and OPEC meets on Wednesday. The gold, in the meantime, is really poor, just not doing it. Underneath this area, ever since we dropped hard on the 13th, we just not got out of this. Any pickups have been sold into. And so at the moment, there is no reason to buy that gold. That looks as if we could be heading to, could be tipping down to 1780 at this rate. You would have thought in these high inflation days, most people would have thought that would have picked right up, but that is not performing. Hence the silver as well. So miners are really struggling. So silver is difficult. The assets are just selling at the moment. The key assets are just selling. Key commodities are low as well. Quick look at commodities. Wheat lower. I've backed off of wheat for now. I'll come back into it when it hopefully at a lower level. Gas is trying to turn again. Orange juice. That's into a key support area. All of these, I'm very bullish. All of these commodities, but they at the moment they are just not doing it. If those beans come back and close up here, then I'll start to consider the beans. They've been as high as 1760. They're down here at 1430. So this is the breakup area from the 25th of Jan. So this suits me very well. I'm going to get very interested in that. I'm going to start to buy into the beans and the wheat if we can hold here. All right, an inflation cycle, commodities like that are way up my list. Right, let's start by looking at retail. Card factory short has been working a treat. We've seen a low as 46. I got in at the 65 mark. We've almost come back to this breakup area, 45. Any push back for my money into 50-52 is still shortable. I'm looking for 30 on this. Ooh, horrible. Really, just not doing it. So we've got a very fragile market out there at the moment. ASOS attempting some sort of recovery, but looking very dodgy. Chewy. I'm classing Chewy as a retailer. We found some support. We found some buyers there, but I'm just not interested in the sector anyway. I'm certainly not buying it. I'll short it. I'm not buying this sector. We've got a series of lower highs. Look at this area. This pump got pushed up in the middle to late May, only to get sold into. Is it a recovery stock? Yeah. If we start closing above 150, but I'm just not into this sector. Certainly not buying. Tesco. Let's look at the bellwethers. Tesco. Good push on Friday. So attempting to hold this major 240, 243. I still don't think that's got much mileage in it. I'll tell you what I am looking at. Royal Mail Group looks lower. Pathetic. WH Smith's. The highs are selling now. There's a big box play in WH Smith's. Well, I say big box play. We've recently entered this major box resistance area. And I think that's lower. If we start to close underneath this area here, I think that could drop back to the lows. I don't trust that at all. Obviously, I'm not interested in this sector. I'm not buying this sector anyway. EasyJet, rubbish. ABF, and some volumes have been higher, but ABF is dodgy. So it makes me question why the FTSE is sitting up if this market is struggling. Let's look at the banks. Let's look at Barclays, hanging on in there. But if we break that low, we could come lower. Right. It's holding. If we start closing above 44 on volume, with increase in volume, I can see that going higher. Prudential. Now that's got some decent volume in it. That's got some bigger up days on volume. So Prudential is a good diversified company now. So I mean, if you're going to invest anything in financials, that's something, the kind of thing I would look at. Let's look at miners. Pan African is had a couple of higher closes and the volumes are increasing, so that is looking better. But if the precious metals don't turn around sometime soon, that is potentially not going to work. So I'm in this. My stop's underneath this support. I'm break even on that at the moment. So I took some heat and now I'm break even. Hochschild sideways, some better volume today. So if that could start a leg up. Griffin looks lower. Energy stocks, Tullow. That's attempting a push higher. Oops. If we can hold these levels, then I would expect, got to see that close above 50, obviously. Got to close above 50. The volume head is improving, it's not great. PFC, struggling. Really struggling. If we break this recent low, then I can see that coming down to 108, heading towards 108. The big boys, BP, decent pullbacks. They're beginning to try to clamber to recover. And Shell, same story, beaten up, back to support, beginning to build. Square, SQZ, it's not Square, is it? Yeah, the volume's coming back in that. If that can close above £3, then I think that can get some higher numbers, definitely. At the moment, the pullback looks as if that's getting bought. Can't say much more than that. It's not proved itself. Basic materials, Elementis. Now that is interesting. That I will buy into that one. I'm going to try and buy the pound on 99p, stop under 92 on Elementis. I like Elementis. TPI cap. That again, that looks. These are commodity brokers. That looks as if that's volume is beginning to increase. Seeing some higher numbers. It's not great, but it is trying. Rio. Decent volume off this support. Yeah, this looks like the time to risk some capital on Rio at the moment. So I would try and buy 50, but I wouldn't hold it if that got below 48. Man Group climbing back up. So I like Elementis, I like TPI cap. I'm looking at the wheat and the beans. What else have I got? Let's look at housing. Persimmon. Pathetic. I mean, that's attempting to hold this 1845. It may well do it. Again, it's not a sector I like. So unless that does a significant close higher, I would not invest. Barratt Developments, same again. Some volume coming in off the floor, but not healthy. Taylor Woodrow, again, beginning to build, but not enthusiastic. Services, no, let's forget that. Retail we looked at. Anything you want me to look at? Healthcare. Right, GlaxoSmithKline really beginning to push up on volume. It's come a long way since this nice move off of March. It's a great support there at 1770. I would try and wait for a pullback if you're interested on that. There's a lot of resistance up there. Let's look at some US stocks before I disappear. Twilio. We have seen some much better volumes on these. So I'm liking the fact the volume is improving. Some of these UK stocks we've been looking at, the volumes are just not that much better off. Palantir, that's had a decent spike in volume. So I'm doing a session on Wednesday on inflation. So I'm just going to disappear and leave this because there's just not a lot doing at the moment. Being in cash is not a bad thing to be in. Very jittery start to the week. So I'm very cautious after that push higher last week. If we fall back, in particularly the US market, fall back into last week's support, so maybe dip a little further in between now and tomorrow. If that buys, then I can see these markets pushing higher. But let's look at the Dow again. Yeah, I mean, we had a decent bounce, but all we've done is gap filled. If we start closing underneath this area, so we gap filled and a bit more, which is typical. If we fall back under 230 here, then I think that could drop back to those lows. So be very careful, very careful. All right, I'll send out a link for Wednesday. Otherwise, tread carefully and bye for now.